welcome to FPTV New Releases, and welcome to double Eisner Award-winning comic book writer, the great Mike Baron, the creator of Badger, the creator of Nexus, the writer of that indelible run on The Punisher. How you doing, Mike?
Good, thank you.
It's great to see you, mate. And you're here to talk to us about some of your new projects. Do you think you could kick off with telling us about Florida Man and what's going on there?
Yeah, you know, I wrote this Florida Man novel, and the reason I wrote it is because every time I went online, there was another story, and not all of them are PG. In fact, maybe 10% are PG. The rest are a little sleazy. They're a little sub-fusk. They're a little sub-rosa. But I wanted to write a novel about a character who embodied the spirit of Florida Man without making it too sleazy or offensive. So I think I walk a very narrow line there. But Gary Dube is just a redneck living in a trailer down by the swamp. There's a snake in his toilet, a rabid raccoon in the yard, and his girl Crystal's in jail for getting naked at a Waffle Hut and licking the manager. And that's how it starts. And it's just one thing after another. Gary's looking for a fast buck. He's a decent guy. In fact, in many ways, he's the most admirable character in the book. But he's got a hair-trigger temper. He likes to get high. He likes to get drunk. And he's got a chip on his shoulder sometimes. So he gets in a lot of scrapes. But the graphic novel is about his pursuit of wealth, which takes him down very peculiar paths. In the novel, he catches the largest python in Florida history. You know, pythons are a terrible invasive species, and the state sponsors a python call every year, and they give a prize for the biggest python. And Gary cuts its head off with a samurai sword, but then he has to duct tape the head back on to claim the prize. That's not in the graphic novel. There's a lot of other crazy stuff that's in the graphic novel. Todd Mulrooney's illustrating it, and just go to that page on Indiegogo and scroll down. Your eyes will pop out of your skull. I mean, Todd's art is just phenomenal.
That's looking pretty unique, actually, Mike. There we go. There it is, right there. Yeah, I love that cover, mate. I love that cover.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Todd did that.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, so in addition to Florida Man, you're revisiting some of your great books of yesteryear, right? You've got a lot going on with Nexus at the moment. Can you tell me about that?
We put a Nexus novel out this year, and it was very successful, and so much so that there's more of a demand now, and I'm writing a second Nexus novel. But I've also written a Badger novel.
Yeah, I love Badger, mate. It's great.
I'm not sure we're going to get it out this year. I mean, it's done. It's just a matter of formatting and timing now. But I'm really proud of it. It treats the Badger in much greater depth than any comic could, and there are a lot of world-changing revelations in the story. I mentioned the Nexus series I'm doing with Kelsey Shannon, and that's an add-on to the Impossible Stars Indiegogo campaign. Which my friend Chuck Dixon is writing. And that campaign is still open. And I've written a Nexus Lone Star Bigfoot Bill crossover that Matt Weldon is illustrating. And everybody's doing a cover for that. Matt did a cover, Doug Tenople's doing a cover, and Mike S. Miller's done a cover. And I'll send you his cover art.
And we'll run it here. We'll put it up. That'd be great.
Great.
Mike, can you... Nexus is such a unique concept. When you look back all those years ago, where did it come from? What was the genesis of that book?
Well, you know, I'd met Steve Rude, and we wanted to work together, and we were in the right place at the right time. In that Madison was the home of Capital City Distribution, the second largest comic book distributor in the world, and we heard through a friend that they wanted to publish their own comics. So I brainstormed the first 12 pages of Nexus. In those days, I would write by drawing each page out by hand. And I'd always start with what I thought was a compelling scene. And it occurred to me that if every time he showed up, somebody died, that would be compelling. But then I had to find a rationale for it to make it different from every other bounty hunter under the sun. And I decided that Nexus was a reluctant executioner of mass murderers chosen by an insane alien to be the conscience of his race. And we didn't get to the insane alien until issue number 19 when the Merc was revealed. But that was my understanding from the beginning, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah. It's funny because Nexus is really one of those books that I was a huge fan. I was a huge fan of it, and your run with Steve Rude, I think, it's beautiful work, right? And quite rightly, you won all those awards for it. But it's very, very difficult to synopsize. I can't think of another comic series that when I'm trying to recommend it to people who don't read regular comics, it's very difficult to knock it down. I think you've done a great job, you're the creator, but to actually explain it to people briefly is not that easy.
Just tell them it's Judge Dredd in space.
All right, that's going to be my new description. And something I've always thought that you did brilliantly well is that your alter egos, your civilian names for your characters, are just so not like the usual model. You know, Horatio Hellpop, Norbert Sykes. You know, you're just coming up with names that like would stand alone. You know, because they don't sound like any of the other comic book alter egos.
Well, I love a good name. That's why I love Dickens. Dickens understood the importance of names, and I always search for a good name. And when I get a good name, then I search for a character to go with it.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you said that, because that question had struck me in the past, and certainly Badger's name is very Dickensian, I think. You know, and really had it. And
thank you.
We're flipping into a bit of Badger now, so let me ask you about. Could you synopsize Badger for the people viewing this, and tell me a bit about the origins of Badger?
Well, Badger's a war veteran, and he's also a multiple personality, only one of whom is a costume crime fighter. The Badger's a very skilled martial artist, but his only superpower, as it were, is his ability to communicate with animals, which he can do better than anybody else.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, there's so much more to it.
There is, and that's it. That is the most basic synopsis, you know, of just a whole universe of incident.
Well, I found Jeff Butler in Madison. I said, Jeff, you want to do a comic? He said, yeah. And I thought, well, I'll strike while the iron is hot, because Capital was interested. And I said, well, what do you want to draw? He says, I want to draw druids. So I said, fine. I wrote this 12-page story about a cantankerous Welsh druid who so annoys his neighbors that they hire the Vikings to drop him off the edge of the earth. Only they never come to the edge of the earth. They come to the New World, and they carry him in, and they bury him in the Midwest. And I took that in to show the boys at Capitol, and I'll never forget, Milt looked at it. No, we want a costume crime fighter. And so I thought, well, why would anybody put on a costume and fight crime? They'd have to be insane. So I went back to Jeff, and I said, Jeff, they want a costume crime fighter. He says, well, I'm not going to waste these 12 pages. So I said, fine, I'll integrate them into the story. And that's how Badger met Ham.
Yeah, right. Okay. And like, how did you, so moving on from your like creator own books, all of which you've got new projects that we've just been talking about coming out real soon. How did you come to be involved with the Punisher? Because it seems to me that, you know, probably the two greatest sort of like, say, I think the three people have done a really good job on the Punisher over the years. You may disagree with me, but I mean, I really like what Garth Ennis did. I really like what you did. I really like what Chuck Dixon did. And I would say that you and Chuck Dixon, in that earlier, you know, more superheroic version of the Punisher that used to exist, you the guys who first did him, you know, like a Don Pendleton character, like somebody who could be standing in the real world. Rather, he might have had the suit to a degree, but you kind of worked around that. In every other sense, it was a real drama to me.
Well, thank you. Carl Potts was the editor who asked me to write Punisher on the basis of Badger. And I always approached it as a straight crime story. And I got away with it for about 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
sorry, carry on.
I had a new editor who wanted to integrate Punisher more closely to the Marvel Universe. And
yeah,
that's when we began seeing X-Men and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, the character just never works when you. I mean, I think what Garth Ennis did that was interesting is his Punisher. He has to interact with the Marvel universe. He's got total disdain for them. He can't stand them. He just thinks they're a bunch of jerks.
Yes, I've read Garth's Punisher.
But you had that great run with, now was it Whilce Portacio? I pronounced his name correctly.
Whilce and I did a bunch of Punishers.
Yeah. That was a very strong run, I thought, mate. And so
David Ross did a couple.
Yeah, right. That was great.
Talking to Ross now about a new series.
Oh, brilliant! So, can you share any more about what you're talking to him about, mate?
Well, this is Dave's creation, and it's based on the Hindu gods. Believe it or not, he's produced an unbelievable amount of material for it, and it's just stunning. Dave's just got nothing better. Let me see. I'll give you the name of the series. Let's see, Dave and Judy. Indrapura. Indrapura. INDRAPURA, and it's all based on Hindu.
So it's Shiva, it's Ganesh, it's all those characters, right?
Yes, all those characters. It's got an enormous cast, and they're all lovingly detailed. He's produced an enormous amount of material for it already, and we're talking about how to present it.
Oh, fantastic! Well, I very much. That sounds like a great concept to me. Very, very interesting. I mean, that's such a rich mythology, which is probably, those tales are, undertold in a lot of Western society, but they're fascinating. You see tons of books that are based on Norse mythology, on Greek mythology, but man, that
I'll put you in touch with him so you can ask him.
Oh yeah, I'd love to speak to him about that. And and so back to, we've got Florida Man coming. There's a whole bunch of new Nexus projects, including a novel, and there's a Badger novel coming as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and anything else you've got any ideas for? Because you've always struck me as such an incredibly prolific guy. I mean, you come up with so much stuff. It always amazes me.
I suppose I do generate a great number of stories, but I have to tell you that it seems to me that I'm lazy and I sit around with far too much time on my hands. I have friends like Peter Brandvold, the Western writer, who publishes 6 books a year. And Kevin J. Anderson is the great science fiction writer. He publishes at least 4 or 5 books a year, and those books are always about 150,000 words, or twice the size of mine. But you see, Kevin cheats. He narrates everything into a recorder and has it transcribed.
Right, yeah. I know, I find that fascinating. As somebody who's a journalist, I just couldn't do that. I've got to see the words on the page to put them together.
Me too.
Yeah, but it's interesting how some people's connection to storytelling is like an oral thing, and they can do it that way. I literally wouldn't remember a word that I wrote if I was dictating it. I just
also Kevin is a real workhorse. I mean, he forces himself to write and edit virtually every day, and he'll keep at it 8, 9, or 10 hours, however long it takes to get it done. He goes over his manuscripts over and over and over, and these are enormous manuscripts, and he gets them all out, and they're all on time. And I would like to recommend The Last Days of Krypton as one of the best novelizations of comic books ever written.
Right on. Okay. You know what? I haven't read that one, so I'm going to stick that to the top of the old read list. The Last Days of Krypton.
Yeah, I think Kevin's got like 60 books in print.
Yeah, no, I know how prolific he is. Hey, as you mentioned DC, I just wanted to harp back on something else. What can you tell me about your 2 Dead Man series? Because I thought they were great.
Well, thank you. After doing it as a series in Action Comics, I realized that Dead Man was a horror character, not a superhero, a horror character. And Kelly was going in that direction anyway. And it just so happens that when I had that revelation, he made his breakthrough in his art, jumping from the weekly series to the graphic novels. And you can see it in the first graphic novel, where he just exploded. And it's been like that ever since.
Yeah, and you were in there at ground zero of that transformation. I was supremely aware when I was a kid and I was reading those books. I was supremely, so when I was a kid, I would just mean I was younger than I am now. I wasn't a kid, but I was supremely aware of that that exactly what you say, that creative leap. That's when he really became himself. It's like the difference between, say, Bill Sienkiewicz doing Moon Knight and then what he came to do later on. I think it was that kind of evolution, even though they're two very different talents. But it must have been great working with a guy like him. And in fact, when I look back on the list of artists you worked with, you know, the Roods, the Kellys, all those guys, you've been pretty blessed with your choice of like
Yeah, I sure
right?
have. I sure have. And you know, the dude and I were just talking yesterday. We're planning New Nexus together.
Oh, fantastic, mate. Well, mate, we will be here for that. And if you've ever got anything new that you want to talk about, we've just gone through everything on Florida Man and Badger on Nexus. If there's anything new you want to come and talk to us about, just let me know. We'd love to have you back on the show, mate.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mike, it's great hanging out with you, man. It's lovely to meet you. Thanks for all the pleasure you've given me over the years, which has been a massive amount. You know what I mean? If I could virtually get you to sign something while we're on this Zoom call, I'd do it. But I'll have to wait till I see you next time in the flesh. So you take care of yourself, mate.
Okay.
All the very best. Thanks, Mike. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.